You can tell spring has sprung here in the Carolinas. I've got a big bright blue sky, tons of sunshine, birds chirping. You know there's one thing we have to do today. We're gonna get out on the grill. Are you ready? I like to say we do things homemade easy here on Bearded Home Cook. So if you're gonna do a grill day for your family and friends, why not make your own barbecue sauce? And so my buddy Si shared a recipe with me about 20 years ago, which was based with red wine. So I've varied it a little bit along the way just to make it easy and fun and different flavors. But the idea is you have to pick a red wine that you're gonna want the flavor to come out in. So I've got a Pinot Noir over here, a Malbec, a red Zinfandel, and a Cabernet Sauvignon. And you may say, Zinfandel, isn't that what my grandmother used to drink out of a box in the refrigerator? Why, yes, it was. But Zinfandels from California are actually a red grape, and that's the one that we're gonna use in our sauce today because it gives a fruity, jammy kind of flavor. Some of them still have a little residual sugar in there, which is just gonna marry really well into our barbecue sauce. Okay, we're gonna get this sauce started over here on the stove. So we're gonna fire up a pan. Now this is a shallow pot, because what we're trying to do is cook off some of the volume of the wine, but at the same time, we're also cooking off the alcohol and we're intensifying the flavors of this red wine. Now, you notice that this is an inexpensive bottle of wine. I'd say stay in the $8, $9, maybe $10 range. When Si first gave me the recipe years ago, I went to a wine shop, shame on me. I bought a $20 bottle of wine. By the time I got done doing the math, figuring out how much I paid for this barbecue sauce, I was over $30. So the wine's been at a full rolling boil for a few minutes and it's already starting to reduce. You'll notice one of the advantages of this wider pot is more surface area, which means we'll get more evaporation, we'll get more condensed flavors faster, and we won't be standing here at the stove for too long. Okay, so after about 8 minutes, we've boiled down the wine to equal 1.5 cups. Now a full bottle of wine is about 3 cups, so this is now down to about a 50% concentration. So if you have a Pyrex measuring cup, I would say pour it out to check it after about 7 or 8 minutes and see where you are. If you boil down a little bit further, that's okay. If you need to put it back in and do a little more, that's fine too. We're gonna go ahead and put it back into the pan and get ready to start adding our other ingredients. Now I'm gonna have it on medium because the last thing we wanna do is scorch. We're gonna be adding sugars. So the idea is we don't wanna scorch the sugar in the pan, we just wanna give it enough heat to get everything to marry. So the first thing we're gonna do is add a little bit of liquid smoke. So just a few dashes. If I were out on my smoker today, I wouldn't put any in this barbecue sauce because I don't want to overpower with the liquid smoke flavor. But today, since we're on the grill, we're going to go ahead and add some to it. Next up, we're going to add a cup of brown sugar. And then we're going to incorporate it quickly because, again, we don't want anything to scorch on the bottom. Then we go with 2 cups of ketchup. I know this is a homemade barbecue sauce. I'll teach you one day how to make ketchup. Today's just not the day because you've got friends coming over, remember? And we're gonna go ahead and incorporate those ingredients. All right, I'm stirring our sauce to make sure nothing scorches. I have it on its lowest setting, so we're still very hot, but we don't have a risk of burning any of those sugars that we've added. Now, one important piece is that we wanna taste it now. And the idea is just like any gravy or sauce that you're gonna serve in a regular dish, barbecue sauce is the same way. Let's see what it tastes like and make adjustments. Oh man, that's good. There's a lot of tomato flavor. There's a light acidity from the wine. I get a little bit of that liquid smoke. I'm very excited about it. One thing you can do, just to try and increase your acidity, is add a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Now I don't do this in the beginning, simply because you don't know what the wine is gonna do when you cook it down. Different grapes, different varietals, different acid levels. So you never wanna make an assumption. Okay, I've cut up several chicken quarters and I've got just a few drumsticks left here. And what I've done is I've started to place the thighs in first and then the drumsticks are going in around it to fill in some of the space. But this is my one little barbecue hack that I wanted to share with everybody. The ideal chicken is the perfectly cooked chicken. And if you've ever put chicken on a grill before and you've had a problem where maybe one of them was a little bit underdone or maybe you scorched the barbecue sauce or the skin just got a little bit too black, it's because you were trying to cook the chicken with everything else going on the grill. Instead, start them in a slow cooker for about 3 hours, on high initially for about 10 minutes, then drop it down to low and go for 3 solid hours. I've put a half a cup of my barbecue sauce and 1.5 cups of water in here, stirred them up. And we're gonna pour this in over the chicken, and we want it to just about cover it. So the chicken is gonna cook and it's gonna shrink down just a little bit as it releases its natural juices, but it's gonna cook in those juices. And as it releases those juices, it's gonna pull in the barbecue sauce mixture we just added. So that's gonna be a really big hit. Okay, now we get to talk salmon for just a minute. I know we're not going to cook it yet. The chicken's still working over here in the slow cooker. But I want to talk about a salmon on a cedar plank. If you put fish on a grill, 9 times out of 10, it's going to stick. And then you lose the skin, or you lose part of the fish, or it just comes apart. So cedar plank salmon is a super, super popular way to cook it. And this isn't just any cedar. This is made specifically for cooking on a grill. So don't just go to the neighborhood lumber yard and pick up a shingle or something and put it on there. Buy this where you would buy your barbecue supplies. You'll notice this one is super light, and down here we have one that's got significantly more color and it's dripping. What you want to do is make sure that you submerge this fully in water for at least an hour before you're going to cook. The salmon's going to cook on here, the water is going to help protect the board itself from going up in flames, but at the same time it's also going to allow a little steam to escape, which is going to help cook your salmon perfectly. So this is a great little trick. Okay, so who doesn't love ribs that fall off the bone? And that takes a little bit of prep work. You know you're going to either smoke them, you're maybe going to bake them in the oven for 2.5 or 3 hours, or in this case, we're actually going to boil them. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but we're going to boil them in a brine. It's going to put some great flavors in there, kind of like we're doing with the chicken in the slow cooker. You could do the chicken in here as well in about 20 minutes. For this recipe, baby back ribs are going to take probably right about 30 minutes in the brine. So I've got 6 cups of water coming to a boil behind me. I have 1 cup of sugar and 1 cup of salt waiting to go in. I have a full head of garlic and 1 rack of ribs. You could do up to 3 racks of ribs in the same brine, but again, for demonstration purposes, we're going to just go ahead and do the 1. So you kind of want to find your center point, cut through, have 2 fairly equal racks, come over to your garlic, and just lay into it a little bit. And the idea is you just want to break everything loose. Then that and the sugar and the salt are all going to go into the pot. We're going to give that a couple of minutes to get ready, and then we're going to go ahead and add our ribs. Okay, our ribs are boiling away behind me. I'm going to do one last thing with the salmon before we get going, but I did want to make one very important point. If you've probably noticed, I've changed cutting boards throughout this episode. Because we were working with raw chicken over there, I used a different surface, I used a different cutting board, I've cleaned all of the utensils in between. Cross-contamination is a big deal. You don't want to invite a bunch of guests over, have everybody have a great time, and then use the same tongs, the same cutting board, the same anything with raw chicken. So those have already been loaded into the dishwasher. I've cleaned the knife and sanitized the knife between uses. Make sure you are food safe. Now, onto the salmon. I've cut them into 2 pieces. And the idea is we want to have nice even pieces, just like everything else. We want even cooking. But something you'll notice with salmon is obviously it's very thick on one end and very thin on the other. So one of the tricks that I like to do is fold the thin end on top of itself. When we go to cook it, it's just going to give us a little bit more even cook. And then we're going to go ahead and add a rub. Now this is just a simple rub we're also going to use on the ribs. And because red wine pairs so well with cinnamon, what I've done is put a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. I've put a 1/4 cup of Cajun seasoning, which I didn't make myself, and that's totally okay. And then I've put in a teaspoon of cinnamon. The flavor is really sharp and really fun, and we're just going to go ahead and start spreading that on our salmon as we get ready to pull the ribs, and then we're going to add this to them as well, and we'll be out on that grill here before you know it. Here's a quick shot of the ribs while they're boiling in the brine. You'll notice that the bones are starting to come out from the ends, but the thicker end needs a little bit more time. We're probably about 5 or 6 minutes away from being done, but this is just a good time to check and see how everything's going. I'm going to peek in on our chicken over here in the slow cooker. You'll notice a lot of glistening in the cooking liquid, and that's the natural juices from the chicken that have released during the cooking process. If you notice the bone on the drumstick there in the middle, the skin and the meat is starting to pull back, kind of like we're looking for on the ribs. So I'd say this chicken is pretty much ready to go on the grill. Let's just get those ribs out of the water and we'll be ready to go. The birds are chirping and this sunshine is gorgeous. We picked a perfect day to come outside and grill together. So I've got the grill heating up. I want to cover a couple of things about the proteins with you because I think they're important. So one thing you're going to notice if you look at the salmon is it's very shiny. And the reason for that is because the salt that's in that Cajun rub is pulling out some of the moisture from the fish. That's super important if you've ever made fried fish. You want to go ahead and put salt on it, pat dry it, and take out a lot of that moisture. Now because the cedar plank, which is sitting over here, is soaked in water, we're going to have some moisture in there, but by taking out some of the excess, which it's currently doing, that crust that the rub is going to create with the brown sugar is going to keep a lot of that moisture inside, and that's what we want. We're not going to steam our fish, we're going to cook our fish. The other thing is you've never in the past been able to bring your chicken and your ribs out in the same tray because you're always dealing with cross-contamination. So here we have chicken that is fully cooked, and we now have ribs that are fully cooked. So this one pan for all of our proteins makes life a whole lot easier. I don't have to change utensils and do different things outside. I can cook everybody at one time. My wet cedar plank is going on. You hear the sizzle? I'm gonna put sprigs of rosemary down. We grow a lot of spices and herbs at home, so I like to use anything I can get it. And we're gonna go ahead and drape our fish right across there. Keep those sides tucked underneath. Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and get our ribs on. We're gonna go membrane side down first. The reason for that is we want the crust of this rub to come down over. Then we're gonna go ahead and start getting all of our chicken on. Just a quick wide angle shot. You can hear the popping and snapping of the cedar plank. One of the important things to do is keep a little spray bottle of water off to the side because that will start to char. But that smokiness that it's emitting is going to go into all the other food as well. Super, super cool. Where there's sugar, there's bound to be smoke. So I've moved the chicken to the top rack. It's actually a very hot part of your grill. The nice part is it takes it a little bit further away from the flame because what we don't want to do is burn that barbecue sauce onto our chicken. So I've got the barbecue sauce right here. I pulled it out of the fridge and I kind of want you to get a reflection of that beautiful color. I mean, that red wine color is something that you just cannot get unless you make it yourself. This is beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip these buggers back over. Of course, they're starting to stick because of the rub. But look at the color on there. Oh my gosh, I am excited. So we're gonna go ahead and get some sauce on that. Get these puppies ready to eat. If you could smell what I am smelling. I smell the cedar, I smell the rosemary, I smell the barbecue sauce, I smell the pork. Of course I smell the chicken. This is ridiculous. I want to give you a close-up look at this salmon here real quick because man, oh man, that rub crusted it. Oh my gosh, that is going to be ridiculous. You can still see it's juicy and glistening on the sides. I'm in for a treat. You're in for a treat. All the neighbors are in for a treat. Look at that rack of ribs. That is gorgeous. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start getting this stuff onto the plate. You can start licking your chops. I'll see you back here in 1 second. Okay, so we're putting a wrap on our grill day. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode and you're gonna make your own homemade barbecue sauce. Because think about it, when you take that first bite of something off the grill that has barbecue sauce on it, do you want it to be something you paid $1 for at the grocery store? Or do you want it to be something you made at home from scratch? And if you look at this food, obviously I don't have to ask you if it looks delicious because I think we all know it does. Really the only question I have to ask you is, who the heck's gonna help me drink those 4 bottles of wine I opened? Bon appetit.